Welcome to the Personal Podcast. Today I'm speaking to the wonderful Ian Kinnery from Kinnery. And without further ado, we'll crack on with the questions. So Ian, my first question. You're open about the fact that you contemplated suicide. What was the thought that stopped you from doing so?
So I've got to say, Charlotte, that's a shocking question.
I'm sorry, but that's in the name of our podcast.
For sure. And I knew you told me the questions were going to be blunt, but that's not quite what I mean.
Okay.
It's shocking because it's shocking to me because the presumption is that there was a thought that stopped me going through with it.
Okay.
That's not what happened.
Right. Tell me more, please.
I screwed it up.
Oh.
I went through with it.
Oh my goodness.
And I woke up and I was still alive.
I never knew that, Ian.
Well, it's not something that I tell a lot of people.
Wow.
But that's actually what happened. If I'd had my ducks in order, we wouldn't be having this conversation now.
Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful that the ducks were not in order.
And you know, when you ask that question, it shocked me because it wasn't a thought. You know, it was either good luck or bad luck, depending which way you look at it.
Oh my goodness. Can you remember the last thought that went through your mind then?
Yeah, this would be the last thought going through my mind.
Really?
I mean, I was really deliberate about it. It's a long time ago now, and I don't mind talking about it, but it was really deliberate. I mean, I was living in a rented house in Gainford, you know where that is.
Yeah.
It had a garage. I tried to get the car I had into the garage and it wouldn't fit. So I arranged the next day to go into the dealership and swap cars, get a smaller car.
Okay.
So all of this was really deliberate. That car would fit in the garage.
Goodness.
So I put the car in the garage. I took my little dog, and walked him round the corner to my mother-in-law's and tied him up outside my mother-in-law's so he would be all right. Went back into the house, drank best part of a bottle of brandy and a load of tablets. Don't ask me what, don't ask me how many, don't know. Went into the garage, went into the car, turned the engine up, on, blacked out. God knows how many hours later or minutes later, I woke up feeling sick as a dog. I didn't know that apparently if your car's got a catalytic converter, it won't work like it does in the movies. It won't kill you.
Oh my goodness.
So I woke up at, I don't know, it was dark, that's all I remember. Staggered into the house, throwing up everywhere. Walked into a wall, had a big scar on my head. Collapsed on the bed, cursing my bad luck. Woke up the next day, and a couple of days later when I had an appointment at the doctor, what's that? And that got me committed to a private mental hospital. So it wasn't a deliberate thought.
My goodness, I never knew that. Well, I'm so glad, like I say, that your ducks weren't in a row. I mean, and I'm surprised, again, being in the state of mind that you were, you just took yourself back off to bed and just a bit cross about the situation.
Oh, well, staggered.
Staggered.
I mean,
Definitely quite ill.
Oh, yeah. It was not a pleasant sight in the morning.
Right. And did you not think I need to go to the doctors? Like, I know you went a bit later on, but straight away.
But when you're desperate enough to end it all, self-care's the very, very last thing on your mind. So a bizarre set of circumstances.
Totally crazy.
But I think one point that I would make is from your question, you know, when this isn't working, when you're mentally ill, pretty much every judgment that you make is likely to be skewed. And that's the frightening thing about, to me, about mental illness, because you can't trust your judgment on anything.
Yeah, but then I guess you were so calculated in your plans. You clearly thought it through. It wasn't a spur of the moment.
No, it really wasn't. And to be honest, it wasn't the first time I had spur of the moment incidents before. And I was lucky because I was being I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time. He's the guy that had me sent off to hospital. And what did it for him is when I told him I went and tied the dog up, his whole attitude changed, because he knew that that meant I was really serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I swapped the car was immaterial to him, but tying the dog up. And that's it. So your question's shocking, because it caused me to revisit that thought process, albeit a crazy thought process, or lack of thought process.
Yes, and so was the dog found? Because I presume you didn't go and
Oh
get the
yeah,
dog.
mother-in-law just looked after him.
Thought nothing of it.
No, just thought, I must have gone to play squash or
Oh, okay.
at the pub or something.
Okay.
And they were out, so the dog was tied up outside.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm just so grateful that it didn't happen, and your honesty is so powerful, and there will be people, perhaps, maybe, hopefully not, but it is a very prevalent thing, especially here in the Northeast, and we're both part of a charity, the Rust Evro Headlight Project, that does help prevent this, but there will be people thinking of that, contemplating dying by suicide right now. What message would you put out for them?
I absolutely understand the pain. I understand the feeling that that's the only way out, because when you get to that stage, that is the only way out. Talk to somebody, hang fire, even just delay it 24 hours. Give yourself a chance. Because the one thing I would say is that I'm so grateful it never happened. I wasn't at the time. I was angry when I came to, but now, boy, am I grateful.
Yeah, and if you think about all the experiences that you've experienced since then, which experience are you most grateful for that you've had, rather than your plan going to plan?
All of them, really. And I think, I don't want to sound preachy about this, but the more, and this isn't about suicide, it's really about feeling totally and utterly without hope. So the other side of that coin is to find as much joy as we can in everything that we do. So that's an impossible question to answer, but when I was thinking about it, the thing that absolutely, and this is an important message, I think, the thing that absolutely blew me away and continues to, is that at that time I was so desperate. I was so angry with the world and with life. And I thought it was so unfair. And a few months, years later, it suddenly struck me that I couldn't possibly do what I do now so well if I hadn't had that experience. So rather than that being the worst thing that ever happened to me, perversely, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, it is crazy, but you often hear that from people who've experienced such a tough time, that they find it empowering in the end.
Well, we say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And without a doubt, that whole episode, horrendous though it was, has enriched my life, and as a consequence, hopefully that's enriched other people's lives.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that really is a gift. Although, if you'd said that to me, 20 years ago, not only would I not have believed you, I'd have just been really angry at the thought of it.
Have you always been so open in how you can talk about it, or has that been more recently?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not been more recently, but for a long time, I was embarrassed, I was ashamed. And then I started to realize that, sharing that story could benefit people. It also explains a big part of my why. And if I'm honest with you, Charlotte, I think any one of us understanding our why is important, and keeping that why alive.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I lose sight of it. I lose sight of, in all the muck and bullets of the average day, we can all lose sight of why we're really doing something.
Absolutely.
So I do find it beneficial to not keep that memory alive, because I don't like going there, but not let it fade away.
Very powerful stuff. And I think you mentioned joy in there, finding joy. What brings you deep joy now?
All sorts of stuff. And we'll talk about this more as the afternoon progresses, I think. But, one of my values is growth. And joy, happiness. For me, all of that comes from having that value honoured, either my growth or clients' growth, or even people I encounter, their growth.
Yeah.
And that brings me joy. I think one of the challenges is looking for joy. And it's so easy to not look for joy. Does that make sense? To
Totally.
look at all the bad stuff.
You become, it's your reticular activating system that the more you don't find joy, the more you seem to find it, and the more you're looking for it, the more you find it. It's that whole blue car thing, or border terriers. I saw so many border terriers as soon as I got my border terrier. Yeah,
and it's what you focus on. Funnily enough, I had a sandwich at lunchtime. There's a brilliant tea shop in Sedgefield, and I was in quite a good mood when I went in there, and I was just watching. There's a waitress called Chloe, and there was a guy in a wheelchair trying to get into the shop outside. So it was a bit of a melee, and I just watched Chloe, and she was just absolutely determined to get this guy and his I don't know if it was his wife, his sister, whatever it was, but he had two ladies with him. And they were all of an age, but she was absolutely determined that she was going to get him in and sat down. And just watching that brought me joy.
Yeah.
Now, on a different day, I might have been watching them messing about with a wheelchair and just getting angry. It's what you focus on.
Yeah, totally. Or thinking about the poor guy in the wheelchair's disposition and, how unfair and cruel that was. Yeah, it's how you look at things. There is no truth, there's only perception, isn't there? Yeah, definitely. Interesting you mentioned your value of growth, because that's mine for this year. That one thing that I'm focused on, not even maybe just this year, but growth of myself in terms of mindset, growth in terms of as a mother, then growth of my children, nurturing their growth as well. So yeah, it's interesting. It's sometimes got negative connotations like growth, but yeah, just in the way that I'm thinking of it, just want to bring people on, develop people, growth of my team members.
Be more today than you were yesterday.
Yes, I love that. I love actually on your email signature, is it improve a little bit every day, or day by day better?
Get better every day, something like that.
Something so simple. And I've just mentioned to you that before Christmas I was feeling a bit run down, a bit exhausted, and I saw that on your email signature. I was like, yes, that's possible. I can, even though I'm worn out and tired, I can be a little bit better today, just a little bit, and then a little bit better again. And it's that again, things that you're so full of wisdom whenever we meet, when you kind of talked about little small changes lead to massive results along the line. And that's, again, something that I try and instill in my team, because it's so true. You get bogged down in those big impacts.
Yeah, in the muck and bullets and miss the beauty. Again, I don't want to be preachy, but having been where I've been, I absolutely have to work constantly on my mental health.
Okay, and what does that involve for you?
The sort of stuff, that be better every day. I pinched that from somebody fairly recently, and I can't think who it was. It might have been Tom Peters. It might have been Marshall Goldsmith, but I just thought that's genius. I'm going to have that, because I need to remind myself.
Yeah, true.
And I'm constantly trying to keep this stuff fresh and at the forefront of my mind. and I have to work hard at it. So to answer your question, some of the things that I do, I get a whole load of blogs and emails, but I'll only take stuff that's uplifting.
Okay.
I really am on a heavy news diet.
Yeah.
I rarely watch the news. Why would I? Gandhi said, I won't let people walk through my mind with their dirty boots. And yet we do that all the time. We do have some control as to what goes in there.
We do. And I've certainly been more aware lately. It's definitely helping. But it's strange how we get, as human beings, satisfaction from hearing negativity.
We can do, and it's a perverse kind of joy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes it's good because it makes you feel good and grateful for your life and your position. That's sometimes how I feel. If I see something, I'm like, oh, thank goodness, yes, I've had a bad day, but it's nothing in the scheme of things. Yeah. I'm very lucky. Yeah, it's interesting though.
Yeah, but very often, I mean, one of the hallmarks of a growth mindset is that we take delight in other people's success. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I suppose it stands to logic that a fixed mindset, we take delight in other people's catastrophes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And to me, that's also a bit of a telltale sign about the state of my mental health.
Right.
If I'm enjoying people's woes and troubles,
yeah,
what's that saying about me?
Definitely. It's something I noticed. I think I told you during the pandemic I had some miscarriages, and when I was going through that, and I've always been very blessed in the fact that I had quite a happy disposition and always enjoyed other people's successes, but in those moments I didn't, and I didn't like the person I was. And it made me understand though that some people that may have come across quite bitter and negative, maybe they're having tough times. So it wasn't a bad thing for me to see that from their point of view, but yeah, I didn't like that,
But to my mind, Charlotte, well done. The key phrase in what you've just said is I didn't like that. I saw that in myself and I didn't like that. If we're not aware of that, it can quite easily become a habit that doesn't serve us in the long run. Is that making sense?
Oh, it does make sense. Yeah, I wonder where that awareness comes from, because how do you know? I guess it's knowing yourself, and over time, and maybe if that had happened when I was a lot younger, I wouldn't have, and it could have got a hold of me. So yeah.
And it's self-awareness. And self-awareness is a superpower. It takes a lot of development.
How can we become more self-aware?
To become more self-aware. The moment you start focusing on it, how am I feeling? Is this the me that I want to be? Is this me at my best? Am I playing at my best? And then you start to notice it.
Yeah.
And the more you notice something, talking about Raz, the more you'll notice.
Yes, absolutely. So then, thinking back to your childhood, was there a defining moment at any point that really stands out that you can remember? It doesn't have to be your childhood, any moment in your life.
No, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't think back to my childhood.
Right.
If I think about it, I don't think I had a happy childhood.
Okay.
Whether that was a childhood that wasn't happy or me that wasn't happy, but I rarely think back. I know a lot of people that I know will talk about, oh, well, when I was 5, this happened. I can't remember, and I don't want to remember. One thing that I do know, because somebody else asked me a similar question, is that when I was, and I'm talking up till about the time I was 16, 17, I really hated not having any control. I mean, I went to a very strict boarding school, so I was told what time I went to bed. I was told what I had to eat. I was told what I had to do. I had little or no choice. And I really resented that. I didn't realise I resented it, but I started to realise that I resented it. So, for me, a light bulb moment was the minute I started to have control over my life.
What age was that, would you say?
in my mind, it was probably about 17
Okay.
when I started to drive, and then I could decide where I would go. And then, of course, as I left school, then I could decide what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I made some pretty crap choices. But over time, somebody said, next to life itself, our greatest gift is our right to choose. And that really resonates with me. And I just keep thinking, you know, whatever it is, how fortunate are we to have the right to choose?
Very fortunate.
And if we don't exercise that right to choose and exercise it wisely, frankly, we probably deserve everything that we've got coming to us.
Fair enough. Yeah, and you know, even though you made bad choices, they were your bad choices.
Yeah,
You can
and
own them.
I can unchoose them. I can redo them. You know, tomorrow's the start of another day. I've got a clean sheet of paper.
Yeah.
What choices am I going to make today?
Definitely. And does it bother that you can't think back too much and recall much from your childhood?
No, because does it bother me? Not in the way that you mean. It's of a concern that I don't.
Yeah, I don't mean like your memory's failing you. I mean,
it bothers me that there's a reason that I don't look back. But it's like the detail that we've just gone through with the suicide attempt. It's all there, but it's painful to dig in.
Yeah, and sometimes we lose the keys to unlock certain parts of our mind.
And that's your mind protecting itself.
Okay, right.
I think.
Well, yeah.
So I don't push that too hard.
Fair enough, because Chris and I have these chats, and I can recall so much from my childhood, and I love it. And he can't. And he's child of a divorce, as he tells me all the time, and he thinks that maybe that's the reason he can't. He shut things down because they were painful, but he can't even remember why they were painful because he shut them down. And I do think you can do that with your brain.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think your brain will do it for itself.
Okay.
And I think after, you know, when I was committed is the wrong word, but when I was sent to that mental hospital, after that I had some help, and what she did was get me to unlock some of those boxes, and it was helpful, but it was really, really painful.
I bet it was. I mean, what's life like in a mental hospital?
Hilarious. I mean, it is like, God, nobody's ever asked me that question before. Well done. It is like a comedy program. You know, it was a private mental hospital. It was in Harrogate. So it was not unlike this in terms of decor and facilities. But then you know that everybody in there has got severe problems, else they wouldn't be there. And trawling the depths of my memories now, but there was one guy who he kept counting everything. You know, so you'd be sat around the table and you go 1, 2, 3. You go out for a walk and he'd be counting his steps.
Yeah.
And after a while you start to think that's fairly odd, but then you get used to it. There was another guy came in for a short while who was deeply, deeply troubled with alcohol.
Right.
And he was just talking nonsense most of the time. It's a bit like Catch-22, you know, you're surrounded by deeply troubled people and you wonder how you're ever going to get better in this situation, but then it all appears normal. So again, depending on how you look at it, it can be really, really funny.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that answer.
No, it was when I look back. I mean, there was some lovely, lovely people there with some proper problems, but if you look back on it, it was funny. You know, I remember we went, they took us out in the bus one day and we went to, I think it was Knaresborough that had a market on.
Okay.
So we're walking around this market, and of course I think I'm normal, but we all do. You know, I'm sure they all thought they were normal and we were crazy. And the guy that keeps counting everything, what's the illness where people keep counting things.
Well, I didn't know. Accountants?
No. Great answer, but not the one I was looking for. And of course, you're walking past a market stall and it's got maybe balloons, and he's going 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Somebody else is talking to the balloons because he thinks it's a person. It is just.
Yeah, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yeah.
Sort of situation.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing, it shows how mixed up I was. So I had a nice room with an ensuite bath. I was a little peeved because I took my briefcase in to do some work, and they searched my briefcase, and I always used to carry a penknife in there. So they confiscated that. I thought, why are you confiscating that? And I remember at one point the door kept opening and somebody would pop their head in just to say hello. And whoever this lady was that was looking after this section of the place, I thought, she really likes me. And I got in the bath and she opened the bathroom door. I'm thinking, she must really like me. Years later, I realised I was on 20-minute checkups to make sure I didn't kill myself. And I didn't realise. So, all of that stuff, when you look at it through the right eyes, was funny.
Okay.
That's not the answer you expected, was it?
It's not, but it's nice that you can have that light-hearted approach about it now. And, are you happy now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew you were going to ask that question, and that's caused me to think about it. Without a doubt. Do I have bad days? Yeah, of course I do. Will I have bad days? Of course I will. But by and large, happy as a pig in muck.
Oh, lovely. And
but I've worked very hard at it.
Okay. So happiness, you believe, is a skill?
I believe it's about choice.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's a choice to be happy or unhappy, but the choices that we make will tend to lead us towards happiness or away from happiness. Does that make some kind of sense?
It does make sense, yes. I believe that too. So you meet a lot of different people through what you do and just generally anyway. So collectively, we talk about purpose, we've touched on it already. What do you think as human beings our purpose is on this earth?
I think we're here, and it's going to come back to growth. I think we're here, all of us. None of us were born to be mediocre. So I think it's about growing ourselves, and if we do that, we'll leave the world a better place.
Okay.
So I think one of the answers is to leave the world a better place. Now, whatever that is for you, it might be raising 2 great kids. It might be employing 50 people or 5,000 people.
Yeah.
But to be honest, when the end does come, I want to have, and I think we all do, want to have some sort of sense that I've made a difference.
Definitely. I guess I sometimes, especially on a night, looking up at the stars, thinking about how insignificant I am, I can't help but think, is there a bigger mission, a wider purpose? Don't ask me why, but I think I've always kind of grown up believing in reincarnation. Don't know why.
Okay.
It's not part of the religion that I was at school and things like that. But I just feel like you're sent back to complete various missions. I don't know why I think this. It's just what's been programmed. My parents don't think this. A lot of people I know don't think this. And
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, does it? But then it's figuring out, well, what is it? And maybe that's part of the mission. But it's just interesting.
And I think we're all, as human beings, we're all trying to make sense of life.
Yes.
What's it all about? What am I here for? And there'll be as many answers to that as there are people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have meetings and I'll obviously be thinking about work quite a lot and my family, but I'm always still thinking about all those deep questions, like almost every day, like, why am I here? Like, why are we all here? What's the point? And yeah, it just annoys me. Like, why can't I just take the day for what it is?
I think Robin Sharma wrote a book called Who'll Cry When You Die?
Okay, right.
And that's just a great question.
It is a great question. Yeah.
And it you know, even if there's just one person whose life you've made better by being there,
Yeah.
that's a success.
It matters.
It matters. Oh, it absolutely matters.
And I've heard you never truly die until the last person utters your name.
Right.
Because then it's your legacy living on. And yeah, and I try and always think about that with my grandparents. So I want my children to remember their grandparents, to try and keep them alive. But I like that Robin Sharma question. To give that back to you, who do you think will cry when you die?
Well, I think for me, unlike you, I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's easier, but if you've got kids, there's a more easily accessible legacy. I don't have that, so I ask myself that question all the time: who'll cry when I die? And it's about, for me, it's about making an impact on the people that I'm dealing with. Now, clearly, in a work environment, that's fairly obvious in my line of work. But you know, Chloe in the tea shop, have I done anything that will make her cry when I die? And that's about being nice and generous to people. And I'm not very good at that.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, when I've got my game head on, I am. But when I don't, I can be a right so and so.
Okay.
You know? And again, that's the hard work.
Yeah, true. Do you think that makes, because if it doesn't come naturally to you to be a kind and good person, do you think it's then false to be one?
No, I think putting the effort in to be more, to be better than, is entirely laudable. And why would we? You know, we're all works in progress. And
Very true.
I'm trying to get better, but I'm absolutely open about it.
No, I like that.
You know, I might have started here. I'm certainly not there yet, but I'm moving towards it.
Yeah. No, and talking about the children, the whole legacy thing, actually, it's actually a reason in itself that people have children. You know, I know so many people say, well, I wasn't thinking about children, but then I thought, you know, who's going to look after me? Who's going to be around when I die?
Who's going to cry when I die?
Who's going to cry when I die? Yeah, it's that whole thing. But I don't think it's a good enough reason to have them, you know? It's quite egotistical.
Yeah, well, personally, I think having kids anyway is egotistical.
Totally, I agree with you.
However, there is something, well, I don't need to tell you, there is something really spiritual and satisfying and right and proper about raising great citizens.
Absolutely. But yeah, there's so many things where you look for traits in yourself, or if they look like you, you're like, oh, that's lovely. And things that, again, I question myself on. But yeah, there's so much we could go in.
But conversely, and somebody said this to me the other day, when, I'll remember who it was now, he said, when my son does such and such, I can just see myself, and it's not good. Because they will mirror not only your good side,
true,
but your bad side.
True. And are they brought there to teach you those lessons? You know?
Well, everything's there to teach you a lesson. It's whether you're prepared to observe and learn.
Yeah, and see it as such. Yeah. Very interesting. So what do you believe the secret to happiness is?
I don't know. For me, I mean, obviously after that episode that we talked about, I was deeply interested in happiness, and I thought, well, what is happiness? And to be honest, I don't think I could have answered that with any depth back then. So I did what I always do. I did some research on it. I looked for quotes on it, and I've got a quote. I can't remember it exactly, but it says something like, happiness comes from progress. Happiness comes from growth, a sense of progress and contribution.
Okay, yeah.
Now, that really appeals to that value of growth that I've got. So whether this is just to me, but I really believe that I know when I feel I'm growing, when I feel I'm more today than I was yesterday, in any way, happiness always comes with that. I used to think happiness was a destination.
Yeah.
You know, and we all commit that mistake of thinking, when I have a Mercedes, I'll be happy. When I'm married, I'm happy. When I have kids, I'll be happy. It isn't what you've got, it's the direction that you're moving in. And, you know, I use a spiral as my symbol. You're either going up or you're sliding down. So it does take effort. And it takes effort not only to look for happiness, to be happy, but to maintain happiness. And we're going to lose sight of that, inevitably. But it's then being able, I think, to regain it.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, when I think back about, again, on my journey to learning what happiness is, it's the days where I've managed to do a bit of reading, you know, positive reading about learning things in business or self-help, that sort of thing. When I've been to the gym, so, you know, I'm feeling healthy, I've eaten healthy, spent some quality time with friends, family. And yeah, that's all kind of that progress and that growth and learning. Yeah, but you don't think about it. People do just label it as when I get here, when I get this object.
And I think a lot of people, to be honest, could be more conscious about the pursuit of happiness. So, you know, that quote has stuck with me for a long, long time. So that has now become a habit. Every day I'm doing something to grow. Whatever it may be.
Like eating cake.
Yeah, hopefully not grow my waistline too often. But if that's good, that's fine.
Yeah, if that brings you happiness,
But
I guess.
But I think, you know, again, being aware of what happiness is. And after I was ill for a long time, when I met somebody new, one of the questions I would ask them is, are you happy? Because to an extent, I think we deserve to ask that question, or have that question asked of us, is maybe a better way of putting it.
Yeah, it's kind of almost uncomfortable to ask people.
Oh, it is.
Rather,
the reaction I got was quite
I bet.
surprising at times, because people don't ask that question.
We ask, how are you?
Yeah.
We rarely get the answer, I'm happy. Unless they're a 5-year-old maybe, which is the more true kind of, just so pure. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But here's the thing. So if we were talking about the cake, you know, eating cake every day might make someone happy, but they're getting larger and that makes them not happy. You know, there's this instant gratification that
for sure
seems to be very prevalent at the moment. And sometimes you have to do little things every day that don't make you happy to make you ultimately happy.
It takes discipline.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, everything, our greatest gift next to life itself is the right to choose. We don't always make good choices, but we have that right to choose.
But we sometimes need a little bit of pain in our lives every day to get to that ultimate happiness as well, you know, so it is.
So sometimes we've got to forego that choice. Sometimes we've got to have fruit rather than cake.
Yes.
But really, because you might have heard it, as I drove across here, there was is it Jeremy Kyle on the radio?
Jeremy Vine.
Jeremy Vine.
Jeremy Kyle's band now.
and what they were talking about is, should it be banned bringing cakes into the office?
Oh, goodness.
Because, you know, if somebody's watching the weight, you're not exactly helping them. And my viewpoint on it is, well, look, it's their choice.
Yeah.
They have a choice. Maybe they need some help making a better choice, but denying that choice isn't actually helping anybody.
Things do seem to be going that way, though. You've got to remove any temptation because people aren't strong enough now. You know, whatever happened to willpower?
But you see, that's based on the assumption that people aren't strong enough now. They are, but if we keep removing the opportunity to choose, they're not going to get any stronger, are they?
Very true. Absolutely. Sorry to interrupt, but just a quick word about our sponsor, Be Daily. I've been subscribing to the Be Daily now since starting my business. It provides relevant and informative information directly to my inbox, not just about the Northeast, but also national news. If you're interested in subscribing, we'll put the link in the description box so you can get the business news directly to your inbox. Now back to the podcast. Can money buy you happiness?
I don't think so. I mean, you know, it's the old joke. Well, it can't buy you happiness, but a lot better being miserable when you sat on a couple of £3 million. But I don't think happiness is about what you have or where you're sitting. It's about who you are and where you're going, I think.
Well, I used to always say, no, it can't, quite clearly. But then I had to pay for IVF. And Camille makes me so happy. So, you know, in that respect, it can, I guess, with some of the science and technology.
But you didn't buy Camille. You bought the process.
I bought the process.
And Camille was the
output.
The output of that.
I guess. But I needed the process to, yeah. So I guess, you know, and then some medical procedures, you know, that you need to pay for. Health makes people happy with I'd say.
Well, I think stuff stops us being unhappy, or prevents or minimises some of the frustrations and some of the negatives of life.
Okay. Yeah.
But even if you take all those negatives away, there's no guarantee that somebody's going to be happy.
Yeah, that's true. What keeps you awake at night?
Again, a really interesting question. I've always been a bad sleeper. Always. So, but rarely do I not sleep because I'm worried about something.
Okay.
What's more likely to be the case is I don't sleep because I'm excited about something. You know, and if you remember when you were a kid the night before Christmas.
I was thinking that before you even said it. Yeah. Even now, I get excited before Christmas.
And I can still picture the carpet in the bed, talking about childhood memories.
Coming back.
I can picture the carpet because I spent hours looking at the carpet because I couldn't sleep. What's likely to keep me awake at night these days is excitement. I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
That's lovely.
But I've been like that for a long time. Even when I had the business, even when I was in that dark place, it was as much excitement about tomorrow as worry about the future that kept me awake.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely answer. And again, one I wasn't expecting. And yeah, I do get days like that as well. But I don't know, it seems like at night, all the worries that I put aside, they seem to surface in my mind. Totally irrational ones as well. And again, something about since becoming a mother, just constant fear of what could happen to the children.
I heard something the other day and somebody said, somebody was saying, what's the first thought when you wake up? And whoever it was, some personality said, are the kids alive? He said, since I became a parent, I've got so much more to think about, to worry about. And I get that. I tend not to spend over much time worrying. I'm very pragmatic. If something needs fixing, fix it.
Yeah. I think sometimes that's, I don't know, again, Chris and my dad, they tend to be the same. Whereas I don't know if it is more a woman thing.
It could well be.
Don't want to be sexist there, but it's hormones, especially that maternal instinct and everything. Yeah, we are different. When was the last time you cried?
Oh, probably, what day is it today? Probably yesterday or the day before.
Oh, really? You're quite emotional?
Yeah. I don't cry in public. But
feel free, though.
but the stuff... well, last night we were watching I was watching the Headlight Project thing on
Oh, yes,
the news,
yeah.
And, I welled up.
The parents of that poor girl, that got to me a bit.
Yeah, it did me, and I've got no problem with that.
Yeah.
There's a line in a Hootie and the Blowfish song,
right,
which says, sometimes the dolphins make me cry. And I really get that.
Yeah.
And many's the time I'll watch something on television or read something and I well up. I'm actually not, I wouldn't burst into tears in front of everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm actually quite proud of that emotional reaction.
I think that's really nice. you know, and I don't know, for some reason I wouldn't have expected you to do that, but it is nice that you do. It's
full of surprises.
I know. But yeah, I think the last time I cried was at watching the John Lewis Christmas ad this year.
Right.
So a lot of kind of song lyrics, and again, you've just quoted one. They stir up emotions in me and nostalgia. And actually, yeah, I cried on my birthday. That's it. My mum and dad sent me this photo, and I cried because I was just so happy that I'd been born and that I'd had such a privileged and lovely life up to this point. But I also cried because the time that has passed between us, and you know, they're like, oh my goodness, you're getting so old now, and I don't know, just time and the way it passes. There's something beautiful but tragic in that.
Well, you know, we're emotional beings. Being in touch with those emotions is a gift.
Yeah.
If it results in laughter or tears, so be it.
It's all good. I mean, the one thing I find a negative aspect of business, and I know we're just going to touch on it, we're not here to talk about business, but it can dampen those emotions. You know, the harder I work sometimes, the less I feel.
Yeah, and you know, there's a saying that we build the walls. The walls that we build to keep out the pain also keep out the joy.
Very true.
And very often we do. Have you ever come across Brené Brown?
Yes, I've read one of her books.
So Brené Brown talks about armoring up. And often that's what we do, particularly in business, to deal with the challenges. And again, I think it takes mental fortitude and agility to drop that armor, so we can be more ourselves and less. So we can be empathetic,
yes,
and firm, which you have to do with the kids. If you think about it, with the kids, you've got to be a strict disciplinarian, even though you love them unconditionally. Part of your job is to keep them on the straight and narrow. You get that out of balance, and
definitely. And then I'm like, well, then now come and have a cuddle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting juggle. But yeah, I love her book about the courage to be vulnerable. I think vulnerability is something that's seen as a negative, but it's very powerful in what we.
So our latest book is called Atlas of the Heart.
Okay, right.
Really recommend. I mean, everything that she does, I think she's just brilliant. But well worth paying attention to.
Definitely. Are you a man of faith?
Yeah. Am I a Christian? No. It's interesting that you should ask that question now. A good friend of mine who is a Christian gave me a book just before Christmas, and I've just opened it up and started to read it, and it's a brilliant book. I was going to say, but it's very Christian. If you take the Christian metaphor and call it something else, principled or aware, then I am very much a man of faith.
Okay.
Do I believe in, and again this goes back to school, do I believe in God, the old man with the beard looking over us? No, I don't. That metaphor doesn't work for me. But if you take all the principles out of it, I probably align with 95% of them.
Yes, yeah. It has lovely values. And I guess one way, and certainly what we do as an PR agency, is to deliver values and stir up emotions through the power of stories. So maybe the stories were linked to get that across. But then I don't know, I question things as well. I would say I'm not massively religious, but I'm quite spiritual, and I believe in something.
And that would be a distinction I'd make as well.
Okay. Yeah. I have struggled defining spirituality. How would you define it?
I don't know. I think it's about aligning ourselves to those higher values, if you like.
Yeah.
Now, reading this book, what's interesting me is that I realise, or I feel that when he talks about Christianity, it's really shorthand for all the good stuff. Now, not being a practicing Christian, I can't use that shorthand. And there's a lot of clarity in his book, because when he talks about Christianity or a child of God, you kind of know what that refers to.
Yeah.
Whereas when I talk about it, it's more woolly.
Yeah.
It's woolly for me.
Yeah.
So there is an advantage to be able to say this is it. I think that's my thought.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just like there's things outside the five senses that you pick up on. Like I think we've spoken about this before, like auras and like, you know, again, I'm not a Christian, but if I walk in a church or a cathedral, there's a sense about it. Now, could that just be all the scenery and tricking my mind? But yeah, like, do you believe in kind of spirits and ghosts?
No.
No.
Not really. I believe in people, and I believe in culture and atmosphere, and, if you like, a collective sense of something. I believe in all of that, and but ghosts and ghouls and no, not really.
No, I believe in energies, and I think energies can be transferred in different ways.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and well, I guess it's physics, isn't it? But there's some things that we're not intellectually enough to perceive at this moment in time that might be discovered, but maybe we're shutting down from it. You know, I think we were maybe more spiritual beings without all this technology, and, you know, being mindful and just naturally mindful, more in touch with nature, and maybe we're closing off that side through business, kind of wanting things immediately, technology,
and actually not paying attention.
Yeah.
I'm a huge one of the words I refer to a lot is rapport, about two people being on the same wavelength. Now, if you think about that, and if you're truly in rapport with somebody, you can almost speak their next sentence for them.
Yeah.
And you think, how does that happen? That type of stuff, in my mind, absolutely exists.
Yeah.
And it's hugely powerful. You've got dogs. I was fortunate. I grew up with animals, and I swear, my horses, my dogs, I would know what they were thinking, and they would know what I was thinking.
Yes. Yeah. No, I totally believe in that, and they almost have that extra sense. They know. I'm sure they know when you're coming home, because they'll go and stand there. And you said dogs. I've got dog now, because Harvey unfortunately died about 6 years ago now. Time moves so fast. When Hugo, like, he didn't know that Harvey wasn't just at the vets, or did he? He did know that he wasn't coming back, and he was just in a terrible way for ages. But, you know, in on paper, what was for him to know that he was gone for good? Like, he'd been at the vets for about 3 weeks before that, but there was something about it. He was a different dog. He was mourning, or, you know. And then there's dogs as well that can sense spirits. So, you know, if you believe in that, I kind of do a little bit. They've sometimes been barking at things, and then there's dogs that can sense, you know, chemical changes in our bodies that trigger.
And that's documented.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. And if they can sense things like that, what else can they sense that we can't? You know, they can smell chemical reactions that mean an epileptic fit's going to happen.
Yeah. Or you've got cancer.
Yes.
Or diabetes.
Oh yeah, the power of them, and, you know, maybe they're at that state because they're not on their phone obviously all the time, or their tablet, because they're so in tune with their own bodies and mind. But yeah, the power of animals, and there's so much, you know, there's people that say, oh, animals, they don't have that consciousness and that's what separates them from human beings, but how do they know? And you know, I think they've got more powers than we think. And there's things like in the Thailand, when that tsunami happened, that Boxing Day, I can't remember many years ago now, a lot of the animals didn't die because they'd already ran for higher ground. And they knew, they sensed it. It wasn't like they'd set off travelling.
They didn't have to wait for the weather report.
Exactly, yeah. Whether they can feel the vibrations of the earth a little more, or somehow. And again, I think we're ruining things for the animals. Well, we obviously are, but through our, you know, again, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 4, 5G, we don't know how that's affecting our environments. Gone off on a whole different tangent there, but yeah. So yeah, you must take on board a lot of emotional strain from your job, like talking to people about their business, their problems in business, their problems in life. How do you kind of offload that?
In professional circles, that's called contagion. Okay. And it was interesting. I I had to go for a checkup just after Christmas, and I had flu. And I was talking to the nurse, and she said, "Yeah, I had flu, and I never get anything." So in much the same way as a nurse manages to build those immunities, I mean, the technical answer should be, I've got a supervisor and I offload to him or her. That's not actually how I do it. I take the stuff on. Of course I do, because that's about, well, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. I take it on, I understand their pain, I feel their pain, but I don't let it get a grip of me, because if it does, I'm no help to them. You know, I've got to stand back so I can help them through it.
So how do you do that then?
Well, it's not caring.
Yeah.
That's building the walls that we've just talked about. It really is about, and I've got a kind of ritual that at the end of the session, I dust off, take a breath, have a cup of coffee, and get stuck into the next one. Does that make some kind of sense?
Yeah.
And what I'll tend to do is I'll sit down and I'll make my notes. Need to make sure this happens for the next session, make sure this happens for the next session. So I wash my feet of
You're extracting it from your mind. Yeah.
And then start to focus elsewhere. And to be fair, because you're right, I don't think I could do the job that I do without, it's a very intimate thing, is coaching, without getting close to clients. And I've found ways not to get sucked into it.
Yeah, I'm quite bad at that. I never thought I was, but I think I am quite an empathetic person. And without realising, I let people's problems become my problem, and I want to try and help them, but I need to get better at thinking, well, and then it's even worse when you can't help them. They just don't want to hear the help. And yeah, I need to get better at that. Just kind of, I want to be there to listen and to try and help them, but then I've got to go home at the end of the day and think, right, I've done what I could there, and it's not my problem, sort of thing. That sounds cold.
It does sound cold, but it's not cold. It really is about, you know, if I get sucked into this, I can't help them. If I lose perspective, I can't help them. And one of the big things that as a third party, as a coach, we bring to the situation is perspective.
That's a really good, that's going to help me definitely. Because
you know, it's not about colluding. That's the worst thing we can do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a terrible situation. I don't know how you're managing with that. That's I'm not helping you. But you know, if I can stand back and have you thought about this, and what about that?
I sometimes think nowadays, though, to speak your truth and what you honestly believe is sometimes the kindest thing, because it can help them, especially if you're identifying something, but it can be very painful for them to hear.
Of course you can.
And you can lose friends over it, you can lose colleagues. And so sometimes, especially in the world of social media, when your words can be amplified and taken the wrong way, a lot of people hold back on that, but that's not the kind thing to do.
No, but I do think, you know, there's a skill set in whoever it is you're talking to, keeping their mind open enough that they will listen. Because the minute somebody's threatened, the mind metaphorically and physically shuts down, and nothing gets in there.
Yeah.
So it is about, and that's, you know, there's a big concept at the minute about psychological safety for people who are in employment, and what that fundamentally means in plain and simple language is if the employee is frightened of the boss, the mind's going to be shut.
Yeah.
If the employee can speak their mind openly and honestly without fear of retribution, that's called psychological safety. And what we're trying to do as friends, as advisors, is we've got to trade in the truth. Otherwise, it's not worth the air that it's spoken of.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, being able to get into a situation where somebody's going to listen to your perceived truth is a skill set.
Yeah. But do you think sometimes people, there's that phrase, the harsh truth. Do you sometimes think that's the only thing that can change someone?
I think it's about judgment. You know, so the client I had this morning, again, I had to trade in the truth with him. If I delivered it very harshly, bang, his mind had closed down. He would have preferred me not to tell him what I'd observed. I know that because I know the guy, and I had to find a way of dropping enough into the conversation to get him thinking. Now, with some people, you can be really direct. With me, it's great to be really direct, but not everybody's like me.
Yeah.
And it's about being able to judge what's the right question, what's the right way of asking it, and how do you set up permission to ask that question?
Yeah, definitely. And that is a massive skill to master. Tough one, but powerful.
But remember, in a formal situation, people pay me to coach them.
Of course.
People pay me
different, isn't
to
it?
beat them up. So they're kind of expecting.
Yeah.
It's very different with, you know, if you and I were sat having a coffee.
Yeah.
It would be a different context.
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's why maybe people have to pay now to hear the harsh truth, because their friends won't give it to them, or family sometimes.
And you're right, it can cause offence. If you like, a really good technique is just to ask, can I be honest with you? I've got a thought, would you like to hear it? It may not sit well. Would you like to hear it? And of course, then you're giving me permission.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to keep that mind open. And I'm prepping you.
Yes. And I've heard that sometimes people's minds go into overdrive asking that, thinking it's going to be worse than it actually is. So actually then it's a better
So
case
the
scenario.
mind's open, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. How would you define success?
Again, I'm going to refer to a quote. The great coach John Wooden defined success, and it works for me, as doing something like doing all we can to be the best we can. Peace of mind that comes from doing everything we can to be the best we can be. So again, to me, success isn't really about material things. It's, you know, are you the best version of Charlotte that you could be?
Yeah. Is that a question?
If you'd like to answer it. But that to me is success. You know, irrespective of whether you're on the bus or you're driving a Jaguar.
Yeah, totally.
You
Yeah.
know, because I keep coming back to this phrase, we weren't born to be mediocre. And you've been in my office. There's a brilliant poster. I absolutely love it.
With the runner on.
Steve Prefontaine, who says, to give anything less than our best is to deny the gift. Now, you just asked me if I'm a man of faith. Whether I am or not, whatever your faith, we're bestowed of a gift of life, funnily enough, of potential. To give anything less than our best is to deny the gift. So whether that be God, your parents, whatever it is for you, your own potential, not giving of your best is really copping out, I believe.
I believe it too, but why do you feel people are more comfortable to not give their best?
Because it's easier. You know, it's easier to have that piece of cake than not. And you mentioned instant gratification. We were all brought up in a world of instant gratification, and that instant is getting more and more instant, literally by the second.
I know, yeah. How interlinked are success and happiness?
I think that, in my mind, they're pretty closely interlinked, but not in the way of possessions, as I've already said.
Yeah.
You know, I think if we're making the effort to be the best that we can be, that's growth. That heads towards happiness. If we're making the most of ourselves, that's also success.
Yeah. And would you define yourself as successful?
Insofar as I believe I'm a better version of myself today than I was yesterday, yeah, I would.
How are you better today than yesterday?
How or in what way?
Either.
Well, how is I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly making the effort to go up that spiral and be better. In what way? Well, it's a daily slog, isn't it? I mean, just the fact that I noticed Chloe in the restaurant today is probably more than I might have done yesterday. Or I'm doing that sort of thing more frequently now than I was before.
Yeah.
And I think noticing those changes in myself is very important.
It brings it back to that self-awareness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I don't go in for gimmicks and props and stuff, but I used to. I don't have it now, but you might remember in my office I had one of those old-fashioned scales.
Oh yeah.
And what I'd do is I put a weight in one pan and pour rice into the other pan. And at some point the scale would go like that. And the question I'd ask is, which grain of rice was it that moved the scales?
Yes.
And it's not the first grain, it's not the last grain, it's actually all of them, all of them combined. So I just like that metaphor, because bit by bit, day by day, getting a little bit better.
Oh, I love that metaphor. I'm definitely going to borrow that one. Another one.
With my compliments.
What would you like your legacy to be?
Really just people, not a huge amount of people, but people being able to say to themselves, not necessarily to anybody else, my life was better because I met Ian. You know, it's quite interesting. I don't know if you know Michael Heppel, but Michael Heppel once said to me, his ambition was to change 1 million lives. And it was actually 1 million young folks' lives, which is a brilliant ambition. Mine's not about volume. If there's one person whose life I can have changed for the better, that to me is a job well done.
Definitely. Well, you know, I can definitely say you've positively impacted mine for the better. Just from, I remember when we first met, I was talking about our border terriers, which is, again, this is my whole reason behind the personal podcast. You know, people don't buy because of the description of what sort of business you have. You know, that's all on your LinkedIn. It's quite mundane, to be honest. You know, there's lots of people doing the same, but it's that personal affinity that you have with someone. For us, the reason that we, I think, started talking was because you recognise the dog on my leaflet, and we both have border terriers, and we love border terriers, and they are the best dogs in the world,
aren't they?
So yeah, and it's things like that, little things that really draw you to someone.
Well, it's humanity, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And you know, I've got such faith and such confidence in humanity, despite it constantly blotting its own copybook. You know, but then you see something, and you just think, oh, that's really kind.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and we need more of that shared.
And that's what will change the world. To be honest, that's really what it's all about. But that isn't soft and namby-pamby. That might mean trading in the truth for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, not being afraid to. And at the same time, taking on their criticism. And it hurts sometimes, but knowing it's from a good place and it's to make you better. Yeah, definitely. I've definitely got better at that, learning again about the reasons behind it. And probably you played a part in that as well.
Well, let's hope.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for all those wonderful answers. We end each podcast with a set of regular questions.
All right.
So there's 10 questions. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, I'd like you to rate yourself. Number 1, how good looking would you say you are?
You know, one of the things about being a bloke is that we don't spend much time looking in the mirror. We don't have to. We're not putting makeup on. So it's not something that I've ever really thought about, but certainly not 10, hopefully not 1. I would probably go for a 7.
Okay, awesome. How funny are you?
Again, I think that would be extremely funny. How regularly am I funny? So I'd say about 8 when I've got my game head on.
Fair. Cooking. You good at cooking?
Yes, I am. I'm out of practice, so currently I give myself about a 6, I think.
Okay, to be improved.
But I need practice.
Right.
I did want to be a chef once upon a time.
Really?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Oh, well, there's still time.
But it's running out.
Singing. Are you a good singer?
No. 1.
How good are you at drinking alcohol?
Oh, brilliant. But you see, it's all about practice. And
Absolutely.
I'd go 9.
Splendid. Parenting skills. You can parent border terriers.
Yeah, and I've got a stepdaughter.
Of course.
I would say 7 or 8.
I'd imagine you've got a lot of good knowledge to impart.
Yeah, kind of lack the patience, really. It depends how old the child is.
Yeah.
Emily came into my life at 10, so that was a bit of a
Easier.
head start for me.
Yeah, but border terriers, I'm sure you have more patience for those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're altogether sweeter, aren't they?
A little bit dimmer, though. Depends.
We both know some bright border terriers.
That's true. Harvey was very bright. Hugo's a different matter.
Yeah.
How good a friend are you?
I don't have huge amounts of personal friends, but those I do have, I'm very close to. And I would like to think that I'm a 9 in terms of loyalty and my behaviour.
How intelligent are you?
9 or 10.
It's a bit of a
And
trick.
that can sometimes be a curse.
Absolutely, and it's a bit of a trick question because everyone's intelligent, and everyone is intelligent in so many different ways.
And that's a great point.
Yeah. How kind are you? It's kind of, we've covered this a little bit.
I would say, and it's all contextual, isn't it? I would say I am kind. I don't often enough express that. So 8, I would say.
Okay. The last one that I've been a bit dreading asking you, because kind of like asking my dad, but how good at sex are you, Ian?
9.
Excellent. Let's leave it at that.
Shall I ring your dad up and ask him and compare scores?
You can if you like.
Have you asked him?
I feel like one Christmas we were playing the Mr. and Mrs. game, and it came up in a question like who's the better, and then you've got it. Him and my mum had to hold up a little signal to say they thought they were better, and I was quite drunk then, so it was tolerable.
It helps, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've only been having the tea today. Maybe next time something stronger. But thank you so much. I know they're not easy questions. I've been blown away by your honesty, to be honest, because some of those questions are brutal. And I've got so much respect for you in the way you've handled them. And
there's no point not trading in the truth, is there?
Absolutely. And I'm sure they will help. I hope many people can listen to this, and I'm sure many people that do will benefit from each little piece of wisdom that you've imparted on us.
Well, it's been fun. Thanks very much.
Thank you.